Everybody knows that the pizza in Naples is the best in the world. Trying to recreate it at home though just isn't gonna work unless you have an actual pizza oven. But there is an authentic pizza from Naples that you can make at home that's just as good as what you'd get there. It's the fried pizza, and that's what we're gonna be making today. If you've never been to Naples, street food is king there, and the most popular item is the fried pizza. There are holes in the wall everywhere where you just walk up, grab it, and go. Essentially what it is it's the same pizza dough as the baked pizza. They use the same filling, but they fold it over, sort of like a calzone, and then fry it. So you've got a little pie that you can walk around with and eat. Essentially, it's all about the dough. So I'm going to show you how to make the perfect Neapolitan pizza dough so that way you can recreate this fried pizza at home, and it's literally just as good as what you're going to get in Naples. All right, let's just get started with the dough. Now I've got a bowl here, and I'm just going to literally just mix everything right in the bowl. We're going to start with some water. I'm going to add some salt and kind of melt it into the water a little bit. Then I just dump my flour right in there, just kind of give it a little bit of a mix. And then the yeast. I do have a link in the description below for all the measurements, but essentially what we're doing here is Neapolitan pizza has to have a 65% hydration level, which means for every 100 grams of flour, you've got 65 grams of water. That's what I've got here. At this point, we're not kneading the dough. All we're trying to do is get all the flour incorporated. The flour that you use is really important. What to look for is a flour that has a protein content between 12.5% and 15%. That's going to give you the structure to the dough that you need for a nice, light, and airy dough. My favorite flour to use for this is Caputo brand. I get great results with it every time. It's easy to work with. You can get the same brand in the US, just a different version of it. But I'm going to leave a link in the description box below so you can order it online and use the same flour that I did. Getting back to the dough. Once we have it all mixed and incorporated, we need to let it sit. That way the flour has time to absorb all the moisture in the water. It's going to be easier to work with too. We'll let this sit for half an hour and then we'll come back to it to start kneading. I've lightly floured this work surface and I'm just going to dump it right on top. We want to use as little flour as possible because we don't want to change that hydration. Now we want to knead this to start working on that gluten, get it stretched, and that also is going to lead to a nice fluffy pizza. Basically take the palm of your hand and push it away. Then you flip it to the side, flip it over, and do it again. If you keep doing this motion, then that's going to work that gluten. This is the part that I love, to really get your hands in there and feel it. It might feel like you need to add a little more flour, but try to resist because again, we don't want to change that hydration level. It does depend on the humidity in your house though. For instance, it's a little humid here today. So it turns out that this is quite sticky still after kneading it for about a minute. This means I do need to add just a little bit more flour. So I just give it a light dusting and then I continue on with the kneading. About 4 minutes later, we can see that it's starting to change. It's not sticky anymore at all. It's getting more elastic. It feels a little more solid. So we're almost there. It took about 7 minutes of kneading to get to this point. When I touch it, it kind of bounces back. It's a lot smoother. It's a lot stronger. And that's telling us that this is done now. This is ready to sit. What we have to do now is develop kind of a skin on it. I'm just going to stretch all the edges into the center. I'll turn it over, and then with the edges of my hand, I want to almost make like cups. And I'm going to push down and turn as I'm doing this in this motion. And that's going to stretch that surface of the dough and create like a skin around it. Once I have a nice tight ball here, you can see it bounces right back. It's nice and solid. This is ready to set aside now. I've got a bowl here. I put just a few drops of oil in. I'll transfer that ball of dough into the oil and just mix it all around. Get the oil all over it. This is going to keep that skin from getting dried out. Now I just put a plastic film over the top and a tea towel, and we can set this aside. It needs to sit for 3 hours. All right, 3 hours have passed. So now I need to form the dough balls that we're going to make into the actual pizzas. Again, I'm going to do just a light dusting of flour here on my surface. I'll tip the dough out of the bowl right onto the surface. And I need to cut this into 4 even pieces. With the recipe that I made, we're going to get 4 dough balls around 200 grams each. So I just want to weigh each one to make sure they're all even. Once I have them all weighed out, I need to form the balls. I'm going to do the same process as I did for the big piece of dough. I just fold over all those little edges into the middle, turn it over. Using the same technique with my hands, I'm just going to give them a nice little turn and make a little skin around the top. Poke it and you can see it bounces right back. I just set it aside and then I finish the rest of them. Now I just want to put them in a tray. I'm going to lightly oil the bottom so that way they don't stick. I'm looking for a deep tray here for this because they are going to expand. We want to give them room to expand. I'm going to sprinkle them with a little bit of flour and then cover it with plastic wrap. Now here's the thing. To really get a good result here, these need to ferment for a while, at least overnight. Now you can get away with letting these sit out at room temperature for 3 hours and then make the pizza. It'll be pretty good. But when you give a long fermentation in the fridge, the flavor and the texture is going to be much different. I'm going to put these in the fridge for about 15 to 18 hours and then I'm going to make the pizza. So if you plan ahead, you can do the same thing and you'll get better results that way. All right, it's been about 15 hours in the fridge for my dough. I'm taking them out about an hour before I'm ready to fry. That time to kind of warm up to room temperature is going to make it a lot easier to form the pizza. The dough's been out of the fridge for an hour. It's up to room temperature. Before we start forming the pizza, we need to get the oil heated up. We need to get it up to about 380 degrees. So while it's heating up, I'm going to start forming the pizza. To get started, we need to shape these. This is when we need to use a lot of flour. We'll take each of the dough balls, put it in that pile of flour, flip it over, get them nicely coated, and then move it in front to that lightly floured surface. I'm just going to use my fingertips to kind of press this dough down and then turn it and keep working it around in a circle. To flatten it out, I'm going to put my right hand down and with my left hand, I'm just going to gently stretch it out. This is where that protein is so important because you can see as I stretch it, it's not tearing. It has a lot of strength to handle this kind of stretching. I just keep going, working around. I just turn it a little bit and pull, turn it a little bit and pull until I get a nice flat and even circle. At this point, we're ready to fill it. There are 2 classic fillings for this that you'll find at every frigiteria. The first one, probably the most popular, is of course the Margherita. Tomato, fresh mozzarella, and fresh basil. The next one has fresh ricotta, sharp provolone, salami, and some fresh basil. The first one I'm going to fill with the ricotta, provolone, salami, and basil. So the first thing I'm going to do is just make a nice light layer of the ricotta. You might want to strain your ricotta first before you do this if it's really wet. We don't want it wet because it has a risk of bursting open while we fry it. Over that, I'm just going to add a few cubes of the provolone. I cubed up the salami, so I just put that over the top. A couple of basil leaves, and we're ready to seal it up. I'm going to stretch that one side over and try to seal those edges best I can. I'm going to really press on them because we want that seam to be completely closed. So I'll flip it over. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to give it a nice hard press around the edges with my thumbs. It's really important that we get this right into the oil. I'm going to gently place this into that oil so I don't splash it. Once we get it in, we want to start kind of pouring that hot oil over the top of it too, so it's not just floating there. This is going to help it cook really fast. We only need 2 minutes. 1 minute on that side, then we're going to turn it over, still kind of keep getting that oil over the top, and 1 minute on that side. The key is a quick fry. You can see the color, it's ready to go. I'm going to put this on a wire rack to cool because we don't want this to get greasy. Once we take that first one out of the oil, that oil needs to come back up to temperature. While it does, we'll work on the Margherita one now. The process is exactly the same as stretching it out. So now we just want to fill it with just a little bit of the sauce. It's just tomato passata. I'll put a little bit of salt. I've got some fresh mozzarella I just tore apart. We'll put that in there. And the basil leaves, and we can close this back up. Again, same thing, we need to make sure those edges are sealed. Then we'll bring it right to the hot oil. You have to be a little patient because this is really hot. After a couple of minutes, we're ready to try it, and it's just gonna blow your mind. When you're on the streets of Naples, there is a technique to eating this. You want to tear off that top because you don't want to burn your mouth. Let all that steam out. That first bite, it's nice and crispy on the outside and fluffy and light on the inside. Once you get down to that center, you're going to be rewarded with a nice gooey filling. As I tear it open, you can see all that mozzarella melted in there. The sauce has mixed with the mozzarella, so it's nice and light. It's so light, it doesn't feel like a fried pizza. It tastes like a margherita. I do love the margherita, but this is the one that really gets me excited. The cheese and the ricotta, the salty salami, all those elements just really come together. I haven't been to Naples in a while, so this really hit the spot. But the great thing is I can do it just as good at home. I hope you give this recipe a shot too, and if you do, let me know what you think.